Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I wanted to talk about a topic that I felt was of pretty utter importance to a lot of people, and that I think a lot of people deal with and probably don't think too much about it until the time arises. But I wanted to talk about the difficulties of dealing with change. Change can be a very, very great thing for many reasons, but as we're all well aware, it could also be a very scary thing for a lot of people, especially if it's very big change. Even small changes for some people can be very scary. So when they find themselves in situations where they have to change really suddenly, like moving or any kind of life event, really those things are pretty stressful for people in general, but for some people it can be a lot more overwhelming because everybody reacts differently to change. It differs from one person to the next just based on upbringing, just kind of you as a person. I think a lot of people get acclimated to it at some point. It just, how long that takes can vary from one person to the next. So yes, good old change. From all the way back then to all the way now, just even little bits every day. Change, even big or small, is pretty much happening all the time. So if you're somebody who is very anxious to change, what are some things that involve change that could be very scary? Like for one, things like moving are a very, very big change. Meeting new people, going to new places, even traveling, new jobs, really quite a few things. Sometimes even small changes can happen in somebody's routine that people wouldn't think about but can still cause a lot of discomfort. If you're somebody who's pretty organized and you typically have your day pretty planned out from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, even small changes in your day, like having an appointment canceled, or maybe you already had your mind made up that you were going to go out on your own and get some lunch somewhere, and somebody casually asked to go get lunch with you. Maybe they invite you out, which sounds like a pretty good thing, but for some people, if they are real kind of strict with their routine and, oh, I always eat lunch at this time every day and this lunch is planned at this time, and people you're not familiar with, especially with things like social anxiety, and a situation such as that one could be pretty intense. So yeah, especially even in small things, the difficult thing with change is that change is one of those things that will always be. We have to deal with it in our lives whether we want to or not, and that can be very aggravating because not everybody wants to deal with change. They like their life the way it is, they like structure, they like organization. Some people are pretty complacent. They're used to living their life a certain way. So when anything kind of deviates from that, it can make them very uncomfortable and even anxious in varying degrees depending on the person. So if you're somebody who experiences that on a regular basis or just maybe in general when it happens, what are some things that can kind of get you more acclimated for when circumstances such as that one arise? One of the things I found very helpful for things such as just change, whether it's pretty rapid, hopefully not, but if you are aware that maybe, if you've been living somewhere for a while and you're planning to move at some point, you can kind of gradually get your mind kind of acclimated to that. And again, it will take some time, but hopefully once you're kind of getting your things together and packing and really kind of getting set to this new life of yours, you can kind of mentally prepare yourself that you're going to be moving at some point. So hopefully when the time comes, you'll actually kind of have more of an idea of where you're going and how long it's going to take to get everything together and any other kind of preparation that goes with that. So if that's something that you're doing over, like, let's say, I don't know, 6-month period, you kind of have more time to kind of wrap your head around that, and that can make that a little bit easier. You can kind of mentally prepare yourself, like, okay, this is going to be my new life now. This is where I'm going to be. This is going to be my trip to work every day. This is going to be my journey from, if I want to go to the store, if it's farther or closer than it was before, or if it's in another area than it was before. But if it's a really sudden change, a part of that is kind of allowing some flexibility, which that kind of takes practice the more you do it. But if it's some sort of kind of small change, like somebody wanting to meet up with lunch, for example, you can kind of, if you're able to meet somebody for that particular event, and it is like, maybe it's 8 o'clock in the morning and it's not going to be till much later, then again, you kind of have more time to prepare yourself for it, what outfit you're going to wear, or what restaurant you're going to go to, and maybe even communicate with that person about, like, the nature of, like, where you're going and if there's going to be anybody else there. And hopefully if they're a good friend of yours, they'll be pretty flexible and try to make that a little bit easier for you. Now, if you don't have somebody who's as flexible, maybe this is somebody you don't know very well. I mean, a lot of it can kind of just basically preparing for the things that you're kind of more aware of. Of course, you may not be aware of everything, but if you at least know some details, like, hey, this is the restaurant we're going to, and this is what time we're going, at least kind of plan on that kind of things. Even if you are going somewhere with somebody like that, and if you are pretty certain about like what time it's going to be at and everything, life is very just kind of full of surprises, and things can always be different than you plan. And again, that kind of is also more along the lines of not being prepared for change and certain things in it. So again, I think more of it is kind of getting involved in certain activities kind of prepares you for it in the long run. But with day-to-day things, sometimes, especially if it's involving peers, hopefully if it's like with a roommate, you can learn to compromise with them and have somebody who's pretty sensitive to your needs. That way, if it's a routine thing that's not every day, but if it's something like going to the grocery, or just like when you have to get stuff for the house, it's, everybody has to go get things every so often that are, whether it's food or anything else, you can try to work something out that's more comfortable for you as to how often you do something like that, or if you do that alone, or if that person comes with you, and if you like need a grocery list and things that really can kind of keep you grounded when kind of you're shopping and looking around for things. And especially if you have a budget too, because budgeting is very important for a lot of people, and money, and that's another change that is very, very hard on people, because those things come up all the time, monetary things that people don't plan, and those are probably the ones that honestly cause the most amount of anxiety, because nobody knows how much money they're going to spend. Sometimes they may know they spend a certain amount of money a month, but they may not know when certain things come up, and that can be very challenging for a lot of people if they have to make any purchases short notice or anything. So yeah, a lot of changes in life, and some changes especially are very drastic, like if somebody has to suddenly drop money on a new car or a new house that they weren't planning on because something very big happened. That can take a lot of time to get used to, but sometimes situations like that you don't always plan on, but as they kind of happen, sometimes you can be more reactive to things like that than you think. Or if you're somebody who maybe is pretty frugal with money, for example, then maybe you're much more proactive about it than maybe some people. But I guess sometimes people do get lucky sometimes. So yeah, change is a very big thing for a lot of people. You may find people giving you a hard time for things like that, but everybody handles changes in their environment differently. Everybody handles life differently. And it may seem odd to handle things such as that differently than other people, but you live your life your own way. You do things your own way. You have a different routine than everybody else's. There are some changes like moving that somebody's moved a million times. They know how to do it. They know how to plan. They kind of know what it consists of. They know what they're doing. But then there's people who don't move very often. There's people who don't do certain things hardly at all, and suddenly it's just kind of spur of the moment, and they're like, well, great, now I have to get everything together, and I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes even making doctor's appointments for people can be very scary for that reason, because you never know what to expect if you've never seen this doctor before, where you're going, or if it's a type of doctor that you haven't had a lot of experiences with, that change in itself can be a lot more detrimental to you than perhaps someone else. So yeah, it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of getting used to, and don't be afraid to try new situations that you haven't tried before. Don't be afraid to kind of get out of your comfort zone, because yes, they call it a comfort zone for a reason, but we do have to get used to getting out of our comfort zone sometimes, and it's not something you can always learn overnight, but it is something that can be done. So if you just kind of work your way up to it and just kind of reward yourself for even the small bits of progress you make, and even if you have a hard time, you can always try again the next day. I mean, if you're doing really well for a while and you slip up somewhere, I mean, that's not the end of the world. I mean, you can get back on track, and you can just keep practicing until you get it right. And it's okay to ask for help if you need it. Get people on board to kind of help you. Because everybody has their own challenges, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. And it may seem a lot different compared to somebody else's, but these things are more common than people realize. But that doesn't mean they have to stop you. They can be overcome with the right amount of time and patience and skills. You can conquer them, and then before you know it, you'll be a pro at it in no time. You might still have some circumstances that are still going to be surprises because that's life, and well, life is very wonderful, but sometimes the spontaneous parts of it are also a bit overwhelming. But you kind of just gotta go with life's ups and downs, and before you know it, you make it, you look back on that, and you can actually be proud of what you've accomplished because you've worked so hard. So if you find yourself struggling with change, especially within the past year, you're not alone. You're far from alone. And I think this is one of the good things about it. There's been a lot of negatives, but one of the good things about it is knowing that everybody's going through this. So if it's overwhelming to you, there's probably a handful of people that are feeling that exact same way. So you're in good company, and everybody will make it out together. So until next time, have a great day, everybody.